Have you ever noticed how the farther we look into the cosmos with these modern telescopes and, the deeper we dive into quantum mechanics, the more the universe starts to sound like ancient mysticism?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's kind of ironic, right?
Yeah, we build these multi-billion-dollar machines like the James Webb Space Telescope or the Large Hadron Collider. And supposedly we're doing this to escape the old myths. Like we want cold, hard, objective data.
Right. We want the math. We want to measure it.
Exactly. And yet the data comes back describing a reality that is just deeply bizarre. It's entangled. It's almost impossible to put into normal vocabulary.
Yeah, the vocabulary completely fails us. And it turns out that, to understand the latest James Webb data or the abstract math of someone like Stephen Hawking, the best place to look might not actually be a modern physics textbook.
Wait, really? Because that's where my mind immediately goes.
Right, but it might actually be a dense, incredibly complex philosophical treatise written in Hindi by Goswami Shah Manohar.
Oh, wow. Okay. So that's what we are diving into today, right? The text is called Brahmavad.
Yes, Brahmavad. And it explores this ancient Vedic philosophy known as Shuddhadvaita, which basically translates to pure non-dualism.
Pure non-dualism. Okay. So our mission today for everyone listening is that we are taking you on a journey from the literal thermodynamic Big Bang all the way to the fundamental nature of human consciousness.
Exactly. We're going to see if theoretical physics and ancient Vedic philosophy are actually, just speaking, two different dialects of the exact same truth.
And spoiler alert, I think it's going to fundamentally challenge how you view the fabric of reality, whether you're a science buff or just into philosophy.
Oh, for sure. The convergence between those two dialects is staggering once you strip away the cultural context,
Yeah.
We are reaching a point where the mathematical limits of astrophysics directly mirror the metaphysical starting points of these ancient spiritual texts.
Which is wild to think about.
It really is.
Yeah.
When you push the math of our universe to its absolute extreme, it just becomes purely philosophical. You're forced to stop asking what is happening and start asking why anything exists at all.
Right. So to see how these frameworks overlap, I guess we have to look at the absolute beginning of the timeline. In modern cosmology, the origin point of the universe is described as a singularity.
Right, the famous singularity.
Yeah, a concept that notoriously breaks our own scientific models. I mean, if you run the expansion of the universe in reverse tracing the trajectory of every galaxy backward through time, you inevitably reach a mathematical choke point.
A very severe choke point.
Yeah, where all matter, all energy, and even like the fabric of space and time itself are compressed into this infinitesimally small, infinitely hot, and infinitely dense point.
Which is really just a polite way of saying the laws of physics throw their hands up and surrender.
They just quit.
They do. Our mathematics simply cannot process infinite density. It's the cosmic equivalent of trying to divide by zero on a calculator. The equations of general relativity just break down completely. They predict nonsensical outcomes.
Right, you get an error message.
Exactly. And the source text by Goswami Shah Manohar addresses this exact concept of a primordial pre-creation state. He draws heavily on ancient Vedic cosmogony found in texts like the Nasadiya Sukta and the Brahmanda Purana.
Okay, so long before astrophysicists were calculating thermodynamic singularities, the Vedic tradition was grappling with the exact same thing, the state of the universe before time existed.
Yes, but they didn't conceptualize it as a dense, infinitely hot dot of physical matter. They described it as a state of deep cosmic sleep. The Sanskrit term is sushupti.
Sushupti, a sleeping universe. I mean, that is an incredibly evocative image, but I've got to say, it feels fundamentally at odds with the violent, hyper-energetic reality of the Big Bang. A singularity is chaotic potential energy, right? Sleep implies tranquility.
Well, the translation of sushupti as merely sleep actually does it a huge disservice.
Oh, really?
Yeah. The text elaborates on this state as darkness enveloped in darkness. It's an unmanifested, dormant state of ultimate reality known as Brahman.
Okay, dormant. That makes more sense.
Right. In this state, which is referred to as avyakta, meaning the unmanifest here, there is absolute zero differentiation.
Mm-hmm.
There is no concept of this or that, no subject or object, no matter or void. It is a complete, unified singularity of existence.
Wow.
And to bridge this with the physical sciences, the author draws a direct mechanistic parallel between this unmanifested state and our modern understanding of a black hole.
A black hole. Okay, that structural parallel actually holds up perfectly because in a black hole, the gravitational pull is so unfathomably intense that it swallows everything, right?
Everything. Light, matter, radiation.
Yeah, it pulls it all past the event horizon. But more importantly for this philosophy, it destroys information. It crushes the multiplicity of the universe.
Yeah.
You know, the different elements, the structures, all the varied data of reality down into a single indistinguishable point, a singularity.
Precisely. That localized breakdown of observable reality is exactly what a black hole represents. It is multiplicity crushed violently back into unity.
Right.
And the sleeping Brahman, that state of sushupti, is that identical conceptual mechanism applied on a universal scale before the dawn of time.
So both cutting-edge astrophysics and ancient Vedic mysticism independently recognized this fundamental truth. Prior to the massive, chaotic, incredibly diverse universe we navigate today, there had to be an ultimate undivided state of existence.
They absolutely do.
And here's my issue with this. Recognizing a unified starting point just creates a massive causal problem.
How so?
Well, if this pre-universe state is perfectly unified, perfectly dormant, and encompasses literally everything, how does it ever change? The Big Bang somehow has to bang. A sleeping universe has to wake up.
Ah, right. The catalyst.
Yeah. Science leans on quantum fluctuations, right? Just random microscopic jitters in the energy field that suddenly trigger rapid cosmic inflation. But honestly, that feels like a convenient mathematical band-aid. How does the Vedic text explain a perfect unity suddenly deciding to fracture itself into a chaotic universe?
So the Vedic texts attribute this transition to an inherent will, a fundamental vibration within that pure unity. There is a foundational Sanskrit phrase that captures this catalyst perfectly. It's ekoham bahusyam.
Ekoham bahusyam. What does that mean?
Translated means, I am one, let me be many.
Oh, wow. I am one, let me be many.
Yes. It is not a mechanical accident or some random quantum fluctuation. It's a profound, willful transition from absolute dormant unity into the vibrant, sprawling multiplicity of the cosmos.
You know, that concept functions identically to an uncompressed zip file on a computer.
Oh, that's a great way to look at it.
Yeah, because when the file is zipped, it exists as one single incredibly dense block of data. Every pixel of a photograph, every word of a document, every frame of a video, all of it is perfectly contained in that dense singularity.
Right, but you can't read it.
Exactly. The data hasn't been expanded into readable individual files yet. So the declaration, I am one, let me be many, is essentially the cosmic double-click.
The cosmic double-click, I love that.
It is. It's the command that unzips the universe into the sprawling directory of galaxies and stars we see today. But wait, I want to address the material reality here.
Okay, let's do it.
Because science insists the Big Bang was a literal, physical, thermodynamic event, right? With measurable cosmic microwave background radiation. Are we suggesting the Vedic version, the sleeping Brahman, is just a spiritual metaphor for a physical process? Or is it claiming literal mechanical truth?
That's the core question.
Yeah.
And addressing whether this is metaphor or literal physics really requires us to examine the specific frameworks humanity has historically used to explain the mechanics of creation.
Right, how we categorize the timeline.
Exactly. The Sanskrit concept for this cosmic creation, the bringing forth of reality, is called sarga. And the text methodically categorizes the history of human thought regarding sarga into three distinct philosophical paradigms.
3 buckets, essentially.
Yes, 3 buckets. By understanding these 3 buckets, we can pinpoint exactly how this philosophy views the physical reality of the universe.
And those 3 paradigms encompass basically every major worldview on Earth, right? Let's go through them. The first one the text outlines is Adamentim Sargavad.
Correct.
And this is the theory of creation that mandates a definite absolute beginning and a definite final end.
It is a strictly linear timeline, a universe born out of nothingness, existing for a set duration and eventually terminating.
Which maps flawlessly onto the standard cosmological Big Bang model. Like, the universe ignited 13.8 billion years ago, and according to the laws of entropy, it will eventually exhaust all usable energy.
Leading to a big freeze or a big crunch.
Exactly. And this linear model is also the bedrock of the Abrahamic religions, isn't it? A divine entity spoke the world into existence on a specific day, and a prophesied end of days will eventually consume it. It is an arc with a clear start and stop.
Yeah, the psychological appeal of that linear model is incredibly strong because it mirrors a human lifespan. We are born, we live, we die.
That makes a lot of sense. We project our own experience onto the cosmos.
Precisely. But the second paradigm, Sarnarantarvad, completely discards that linearity. This is the theory of continuous cyclic creation.
Okay, cyclic.
Yes. Under this framework, the universe has no absolute point of origin and no final permanent destruction. It is an eternal mechanism undergoing endless cycles of expansion, stabilization, contraction, and rebirth.
Like a cosmic heartbeat. And from a physics standpoint, this aligns really closely with the oscillating universe theory, right?
It does, very close.
The idea that the big crunch of one universe acts as the big bang for the next, bouncing infinitely. Culturally, this is the fundamental architecture of Eastern religions like Jainism and Buddhism. Time isn't an arrow. It's a wheel that grinds on forever.
That's right. Then the text introduces the third paradigm, Asargavad, which radically departs from the first two. This is the theory that no creation ever actually took place.
Wait, hold on. No creation. That seems immediately contradictory to our own senses. We're sitting here having this conversation. Stars are burning hydrogen right now. How can a philosophical framework argue that creation never happened?
Well, it manifests in two entirely different ways, one scientific and one metaphysical.
Okay, lay them on me.
Scientifically, it resembles the steady-state theory. This was actually highly popular in the mid-20th century before the discovery of the cosmic microwave background.
Oh, right. Einstein even toyed with that for a bit.
He did. The steady-state theory posited that the universe simply exists, eternally unchanging on a macro level, with no beginning and no end, just constantly creating tiny amounts of matter to maintain its density as it expands.
Okay, so that's the science side. What about the metaphysical side?
Metaphysically, Asargavad is fiercely championed by certain schools of Advaita Vedanta through the concept of Maya.
Maya meaning illusion, right.
Exactly. Their logic is very strict. They say if ultimate reality Brahman is formless, eternal, and unchanging, then this messy, decaying physical universe cannot possibly be real. It must be a trick of human perception.
Wow.
Therefore, the universe was never truly created because it doesn't actually exist. It is merely a projection we are trapped in.
Okay, so we have the linear universe doomed to die, the cyclical universe trapped in an infinite loop, and the illusory universe that isn't actually there at all.
Those are the three.
So if we are using Shuddhadvaita as our lens to view modern physics, which of these paradigms does its founder, Vallabhacharya, actually adopt?
Vallabhacharya rejects the illusion theory entirely.
Really? He rejects Maya?
Yes. He finds the concept of Maya fundamentally flawed because it implies that ultimate reality is capable of producing falsehood, and that contradicts its perfect nature.
Oh, that's an interesting point. If God is perfect, God wouldn't make a fake universe.
Exactly. Instead, he introduces a brilliant mechanism called Avikrita Parinavavad.
That's a mouthful. Avikrita Parinavavad.
It translates to a transformation that occurs without altering the core essence. He argues that the physical universe is an absolutely real, tangible manifestation of Brahman.
Okay, so it's not an illusion.
No, not at all. Brahman does not create the universe out of some secondary material, nor does it conjure an illusion. Brahman becomes the universe.
Right.
But crucially, it does so without losing a single fraction of its fundamental, perfect nature.
That is fascinating. So if we apply this to the physical world, that's essentially the transformation of elemental gold.
The gold analogy, yes, perfect.
Yeah, you can take a solid gold ring, toss it into a crucible, melt it down to liquid, and forge it into an entirely new shape, right? Like a gold necklace.
Wow.
The form of the ring has been utterly destroyed. The visual geometry is completely different. But the fundamental goldness is entirely unchanged. The elemental substance hasn't been diluted or altered at all.
That is exactly what Vallabhacharya is arguing. The universe, the stars, the quasars, the dirt, the cells in our bodies is the necklace. And the underlying unified reality of Brahman is the gold.
That's so elegant.
It is.
Yeah.
The multiplicity we observe is merely the infinite variety of shapes that the fundamental substance of reality has assumed. It validates the material reality of the universe without sacrificing the spiritual unity of its origin.
But this theoretical transformation requires a mechanism. I mean, if this underlying unified reality is changing form on a cosmic scale, what are the actual forces driving that physical transformation?
That takes us directly into the territory of modern quantum mechanics and field theory.
Ah, my favorite part. Because when physicists look at the observable universe, they have boiled every single physical interaction down to just 4 fundamental forces.
Yes, just 4.
You've got gravity, which pulls massive objects together. Electromagnetism, which governs light and binds atoms. the strong nuclear force, which holds the nucleus of an atom tightly together, and the weak nuclear force, which dictates radioactive decay.
Everything you see.
Literally everything that has ever happened in the history of the physical universe is just a complex interplay of those four forces.
Yet the entire field of modern theoretical physics is plagued by this intense dissatisfaction with those four forces. Physicists are obsessed with finding absolute mathematical unity.
Oh, for sure. They hate that there are four.
They really do. For decades, the holy grail of science has been the grand unified theory, a single, elegant mathematical equation that proves gravity, electromagnetism, and the nuclear forces are not actually separate entities, but merely different expressions of one underlying superforce that fractured fractions of a second after the Big Bang.
And the text points this out, right?
Yes, the text astutely points out that this modern scientific pursuit of the grand unified theory is philosophically identical to the ancient Vedantic pursuit of Brahman. Both disciplines are driven by an unshakable human intuition that beneath the fractured, chaotic surface of reality, a single, unifying principle dictates everything.
But the physicists are stuck, like really stuck.
Very stuck.
Because we have general relativity, Einstein's masterpiece, which perfectly explains the macro universe, right? How gravity warps space-time around stars and black holes.
Oh, right.
And then we have quantum mechanics, which perfectly explains the micro universe, how subatomic particles jump between states and entangle with one another, but mathematically they are completely incompatible.
They speak two different mathematical languages.
Exactly. General relativity requires a smooth, continuous, predictable fabric of space-time. Quantum mechanics requires a chunky, quantized, inherently unpredictable reality built on probabilities. And when you try to use both formulas to describe the center of a black hole, the math just shatters. They cannot both be objectively true.
And to address that mathematical impasse, the source text introduces a paradigm-shifting concept from theoretical physicist Stephen Hawking. You can find this in his book, The Grand Design.
Okay, what did Hawking propose?
He proposed a framework called model-dependent realism.
Model-dependent realism.
He argued that because human consciousness is completely embedded inside the universe, perceiving it exclusively through the limited sensory apparatus of a biological brain, it is actually scientifically meaningless to ask what is objectively or ultimately real.
Meaningless?
Yes. We lack the capacity to step outside the universe and observe it without bias. Therefore, reality, for all practical scientific purposes, is simply whatever mathematical or conceptual model most accurately predicts our local observations.
That is a staggering concession from one of the greatest scientific minds in history.
It really is.
It essentially means that if general relativity successfully predicts how a satellite orbits the Earth, then general relativity is real for that specific scale. And if quantum mechanics successfully predicts how a microchip processes electrons, then quantum mechanics is also real for that microscopic scale, even if those two models fundamentally contradict each other when placed side by side. But isn't that just giving up on the concept of objective truth entirely?
Well, it appears that way to a mind trained in strict Western binary logic. But the text draws a profound connection between Hawking's modern scientific concession and an ancient Jain philosophical doctrine called Anekantavada.
Anekantavada.
Or the multiplicity of viewpoints. Anekantavada asserts that ultimate reality is so vastly complex, so multidimensional, that no single human perspective and no single logical or mathematical model can possibly capture its totality.
So any model is going to be flawed.
Any model we create will inherently be a low-resolution approximation of a high-resolution universe.
It's the ancient parable of the blind man and the elephant applied to theoretical physics.
Yes, perfect analogy.
Like one blind man feels the elephant's trunk and mathematically models reality as a thick, flexible snake. Another feels the elephant's leg and models reality as a sturdy, immovable tree trunk. And they are both gathering highly accurate empirical data based on their localized observation, right? Their models perfectly predict how that specific part of the elephant behaves. But because they cannot zoom out to see the entire creature, their objective claims directly contradict each other.
Exactly. Modern theoretical physicists and ancient metaphysicians both eventually hit the exact same impenetrable wall. It's the humbling realization that absolute objective reality cannot be cleanly pinned down by a singular logical framework.
Okay, so how does Shuddhadvaita deal with this?
To resolve this, Shuddhadvaita introduces a concept that stretches the very limits of human comprehension. It is called Viruddhadharmashrayatva.
I am going to need a very grounded explanation of Viruddhadharmashriyatva, because translated directly, it means the capacity to harbor entirely contradictory qualities simultaneously.
It does.
And I'll be honest, that sounds less like a profound truth and more like an intellectual cop-out to excuse bad math.
I get that. It demands a total suspension of classical Newtonian logic. Because human logic dictates that an object cannot be infinitely large and infinitesimally small at the identical moment. An object cannot be traveling at the speed of light while remaining perfectly motionless.
Right, that's impossible.
But Shuddhadvaita argues that human logic is a construct within the universe, governed by the rules of the universe. Brahman, as the source and totality of reality, sits entirely outside that framework.
Oh, I see.
Because it is the source of all parameters, it is bound by none of them. Therefore, the ultimate reality can and must possess entirely contradictory properties simultaneously without any inherent conflict.
Okay, I want to push back hard on this.
Go for it.
If we accept that everything is just a model, a limited perspective, and that ultimate reality can cheerfully ignore the laws of non-contradiction whenever it pleases, doesn't that invite complete intellectual chaos?
It sounds chaotic, yes.
Right. If reality can just be a giant swirling contradiction, why do we build particle accelerators? Why do we try to calculate the mass of a Higgs boson? What is the point of trying to understand a universe that refuses to be understood?
That frustration is completely justified if you assume the universe was designed to be a solvable puzzle.
Was it not?
The philosophy presented in the text argues that this structural complexity, these endless contradictions and incompatible perspectives, are not a bug in the code of reality. They are the core feature.
A feature.
Yes, it is intentional design.
Yeah.
And the motivation behind this bewildering design isn't some cold, random necessity of thermodynamic physics. The text posits a motivation that sounds surprisingly, profoundly human.
Wait, we're assigning human motivation to the fabric of space-time?
Yes.
What could possibly motivate a perfectly unified reality to fracture into a chaotic, contradictory universe?
Play.
Are you suggesting the Big Bang, the evolution of galaxies, and the agony of quantum mathematics are the byproduct of a cosmic entity having fun?
We must rigorously define what play means in this context, because this addresses the ultimate why of the universe. Science is highly adept at answering the how gravity warps space, how atomic nuclei fuse. But the why is entirely elusive.
It's the biggest question there is.
And the foundational theological dilemma is this. If a perfect, complete, totally unified entity exists in a state of absolute undisturbed peace, why would it ever exert the effort to create a universe utterly saturated with flaws, duality, pain, and intense struggle? If you are already perfect, why do anything at all?
That is the ultimate stumbling block for almost every major theology. If a creator is omnipotent and perfectly content, the creation of a flawed earth seems like a massive downgrade.
Right.
What is the incentive?
The answer the text provides is the profound concept of Leela, which translates to divine play or cosmic sport. And to understand Leela, you must strip away the mundane connotations of the word play and contrast it sharply with the concept of work.
Okay, the fundamental difference between work and play is vital here, because going to an office for 8 hours to pay a mortgage is undeniably work. What is the psychological or cosmic distinction?
The distinction lies entirely in the motivation and the presence of deficit.
Deficit.
Yes. Work is an action you perform to achieve a missing goal, to fulfill a lack, or to bridge a gap between what you have and what you need.
Yep.
You work a job because you lack financial resources. You build a shelter because you lack protection from the element.
Right. Work is inherently driven by insufficiency.
Now, apply that to ultimate reality. If Brahman is a perfect, infinite, totally self-contained being, it lacks absolutely nothing. It has no unfulfilled desires, no missing resources, no vulnerabilities.
So it can't work.
Exactly. It is metaphysically impossible for Brahman to work. It cannot create a universe to fulfill a need because it has no needs.
So if it isn't driven by a deficit, it has to be driven by a surplus.
Precisely. Play is an action performed not to acquire something missing, but as an uncontrollable overflow of what is already abundantly present. It is an expression of excess energy and joy.
Okay, I'm tracking with you.
When a child runs aimlessly around a field, they aren't trying to achieve a specific destination or earn a wage. The physical act of running itself is the joy. The activity requires no external justification. It is entirely self-contained.
Right.
The text argues that the universe is not a factory designed to produce a specific outcome for Brahman. The universe is a playground.
That fundamentally shifts how we view friction and struggle. Think about the psychology of playing a complex video game.
Oh, that's a good analogy.
Yeah, when you buy a massive open-world game, your objective isn't to reach the end credits as fast as humanly possible.
Right.
If the developers offered you a button on the main menu that instantly skipped the entire game and just showed you the "you win" screen, you wouldn't press it.
No, you'd feel cheated.
Exactly. The joy of the game doesn't exist at the finish line. It exists entirely within the friction. It's in the challenges, the difficult puzzles, the terrifying boss fights, the process of leveling up. The limitation is what makes the game worth playing.
Yes.
Or consider music. You don't play a guitar simply to strike the final chord of the song. The act of playing the notes is the entire point.
That analogy maps perfectly onto the philosophy of Leela. And the text actually systematically breaks this cosmic play down into 3 distinct categories to explain the varied mechanics of the universe.
Okay, let's break them down.
The first is Svabhaviki Leela, which translates to the natural, spontaneous flow of existence. This is the effortless, inherent play of reality. It is akin to a river flowing down a mountain or a star emitting light.
Just natural processes.
Right. It requires no premeditation. It is simply the fundamental nature of Brahman expressing itself in motion.
It's the cosmic equivalent of breathing or a heartbeat. You don't consciously tell your lungs to expand. Your body just effortlessly performs the action because it is alive.
Exactly. The second category is Prabhavani Leela, which describes the influential, almost magical manifestation of the universe. This encompasses the awe-inspiring, jaw-dropping scale and complexity of reality.
Look at big stuff.
The formation of swirling spiral galaxies, the bizarre, counterintuitive laws of quantum entanglement, the intricate biology of a human eye. It is the grand, overwhelming magic show that leaves the conscious observer utterly stunned by its majesty.
That is the moment in the video game where your character steps out of a dark cave onto a high cliff and the camera pans back to reveal this massive, beautifully rendered mountain range, and you just drop the controller and whisper, "Whoa!"
Yes, it's the sheer aesthetic spectacle of existence.
So what's the third one?
The third and perhaps most crucial category is Lilatmika, and this is pure, unadulterated play for its own sake. This is the joy of experiencing multiplicity. It is the cosmic game of hide and seek, where the unified whole deliberately forgets its own unity, fragmenting itself into billions of distinct, conscious entities like us, just to experience the thrill, the drama, and the eventual triumph of rediscovering its true nature.
Wait, the universe is Brahman playing hide and seek with itself across billions of light years?
That's the idea.
Okay, but if we accept this premise that the entire universe is an expression of overflowing joy, an infinite game of hide and seek played by a unified consciousness, it forces us to drastically redefine the very concept of joy.
It absolutely does.
Because if we look objectively at the human experience on Earth, a massive percentage of it does not feel joyful.
No, it doesn't.
It feels stressful, painful, and terrifying.
And that harsh reality is not ignored by the text. In fact, it drives us deep into a section called the Ananda Mimamsa, which is a rigorous, almost scientific inquiry into the nature of Ananda.
Ananda, that's the Sanskrit term for absolute bliss, right?
Yes. And the philosophy makes a surgical distinction between our mundane, earthly understanding of happiness and true cosmic bliss. They are not the same substance.
Because earthly happiness is incredibly fragile.
Very fragile.
It is entirely conditional. Like, I experience a spike of happiness because I eat an amazing meal, but that happiness vanishes the moment I get hungry again. Or I feel joy because I received a massive promotion at work, but that joy is immediately replaced by the intense anxiety of my new responsibilities.
Right, the hedonic treadmill.
Exactly. Mundane happiness is finite, dependent entirely on external variables aligning perfectly, and it is permanently haunted by a low-level, pervasive hum of existential dread. The paralyzing fear of inevitably losing whatever is making you happy.
Earthly happiness is fundamentally insecure. And to illustrate the inadequacy of this conditional joy, the text references a foundational narrative from the ancient Brihadaranyaka Upanishad.
Okay, what's the story?
It features a profound dialogue between a highly revered sage named Yajnavalkya and his wife, Maitreyi. Yajnavalkya has decided to renounce his worldly life, to enter the forest for intense meditation.
So he's leaving everything behind.
Yes. Before departing, he offers to divide his vast wealth, his property, and all his worldly assets between his 2 wives, ensuring their material comfort.
From a purely practical standpoint, he is securing their earthly happiness. He's giving them a lifetime supply of financial security.
But Maitreyi possesses a deeply philosophical mind, and she recognizes the trap of material security. She stops him and asks a devastatingly simple question. She says, "If I possess all the wealth of the entire earth, will this wealth make me immortal?"
Oh, wow. She is stress testing the limits of material joy.
Exactly.
She wants to know if money can cure the ultimate human anxiety, which is death. What is his response?
Yezin Volke is brutally honest. He tells her, "No, your life will simply be like the life of any other wealthy person. You will have comfort, but there's absolutely no hope of immortality through wealth."
Wow.
Upon hearing this undeniable truth, Maitreyi immediately rejects the vast fortune. She realizes that any happiness derived from material wealth, status, or external comfort is inherently finite. It will inevitably be corroded by time and ultimately destroyed by death.
So she refuses the illusion of security.
Yes, and instead demands that her husband teach her the secret to ultimate, imperishable bliss.
Okay, so if external wealth and conditional happiness are rejected as illusions, what is the alternative? How does this philosophy define the ultimate bliss that Maitreyi is demanding?
It defines it through the compound concept of Satchidananda.
Satchidananda.
Yes, which serves as the foundational description of ultimate reality. Sat translates to truth or absolute unshakable existence. Chit translates to absolute pure consciousness or awareness, and Ananda translates to absolute limitless bliss.
Existence, consciousness, bliss.
Precisely.
But, and I have to ask, how does that solve the problem of human suffering? Saying the universe is made of existence, consciousness, and bliss sounds beautiful, but it doesn't change the reality of a terrible Tuesday.
I know. And here is the critical paradigm shift that Western minds really struggle with. In this Vedic framework, Ananda bliss is not an emotion. It is not a chemical reaction in the brain. It is not something you merely feel.
Then what is it?
It is what you fundamentally are. It is an objective building block of reality. Think of it structurally.
Yeah.
Just as a piece of coal has the fundamental property of carbon and water has the fundamental property of being wet, the underlying indivisible nature of the entire universe is bliss. You do not acquire Ananda. You are constructed out of it.
Okay, I have to challenge this premise aggressively.
I figured you might.
If the entire cosmos is woven out of pure bliss, and my own fundamental structural nature is absolute joy, why does the human experience feature so much misery? Why does battling a severe illness or suffering through a brutal divorce or watching a loved one pass away feel so agonizingly far from bliss? If I am made of joy, why am I so frequently consumed by grief and stress?
That is the ultimate crux of the human condition, and the philosophy provides a fascinating mechanistic answer. It argues that the misery, the acute suffering and stress we experience in this physical world is not caused by the addition of some external evil force.
Okay, so it's not like a devil figure.
No. The suffering is actually caused by the temporary, deliberate concealment of our inherent Ananda. The technical term used in the text is tirupava, which translates to a veiling, a hiding, or a suppression.
So the absolute joy is constantly present inside of us, but it has been intentionally covered up or muted.
Exactly. And to understand why it must be covered up, we have to refer back to the concept of Leela, the divine play. For any game to be genuinely engaging, there must be stakes.
Right.
There must be strict rules, profound limitations, and the very real possibility of failure or loss. Imagine playing a highly complex strategy video game, but you activate God mode before you start.
Oh man, God mode gets so boring.
Exactly. You grant yourself infinite health, unlimited resources, and the ability to instantly destroy any enemy. It might be amusing for 5 minutes, but the lack of friction rapidly turns the experience into hollow boredom.
Because there's no challenge.
The only way an omnipotent player can truly enjoy the game is by willingly restricting their own power, imposing artificial limitations upon themselves to create the illusion of vulnerability.
Wow. Okay, so the concept of tirupava, this concealment of our inherent bliss, functions exactly like the fog of war in a military strategy game.
Yes, the fog of war.
The player knows the entire map exists, but the game purposefully blacks out the areas they haven't explored yet to create tension, surprise, and narrative drive.
That's it, exactly.
The universe Brahman is deliberately utilizing tirupava to hide its own infinite joy and omnipotence from localized pockets of its own consciousness.
And you and I are those localized pockets.
We are subjected to the fog of war so that the universe can experience the genuine thrill of the journey. the heartbreaking drama of limitation, the terror of mortality, and the ultimate triumphant joy of slowly waking back up to its true nature.
Yes.
The misery of human existence isn't a tragic flaw in the design of the universe. It is the necessary, agonizing friction required for the game of existence to be played at all.
That synthesis captures the profound theological weight of the text perfectly. The separation we feel from each other, the intense stress of daily survival, the deep grief of loss, it is all a highly convincing, necessary trick of the cosmic mind.
Incredible.
And the primary tool the human mind utilizes to enforce this separation, to ensure the fog of war remains thick and the game continues uninterrupted, is language.
Language. Which brings us to the final and arguably most insurmountable hurdle we face when discussing astrophysics or ancient mysticism. It is the realization that the very words we are using right now in this conversation are completely insufficient to articulate the reality of the universe.
The struggle with linguistics is a major focal point in the source text. It asks a seemingly impossible question. How do you accurately describe Brahman?
You can't, right?
Exactly. How do you assign language to an entity that exists entirely outside of the linear flow of time, occupies no physical space, and possesses zero measurable form? Every single noun, verb, and adjective in our vocabulary evolves specifically to categorize objects and actions within the boundaries of time, space, and duality.
It's an extreme translation issue. Like, imagine trying to explain the architecture of the modern internet, fiber optic data packets, cloud computing, Wi-Fi routers to a medieval farmer living in the year 1500.
Good luck with that.
Right. But you are strictly limited to using the agricultural vocabulary of his era. You could try to explain a server farm by talking about sowing magical seeds of invisible information or harvesting invisible crops of data, but the farming vocabulary is structurally incapable of capturing the reality of electromagnetism.
Yes.
The farmer's language will permanently trap his understanding in the dirt, and our current language traps our understanding in a three-dimensional linear box.
The ancient sages who composed the Upanishads recognized this linguistic trap thousands of years ago. And to bypass the limitations of language, they developed a rigorous philosophical methodology known as neti-neti.
Neti-neti,
Yeah.
translated as not this, not that, right?
Precisely. The logic behind neti-neti is that any positive declarative word you use to describe the infinite absolute immediately acts as a limitation.
How so?
Well, if you confidently state Brahman is light, you are simultaneously implying that Brahman is not darkness. But since Brahman is the totality of everything, it must encompass both light and darkness.
I see.
Therefore, the only intellectually honest way to describe the ultimate reality is through a process of aggressive negation. You observe every physical and conceptual phenomenon in the universe and declare, it is not merely this, it is not merely that.
You just strip it all away.
You strip away every limited category, every dualistic concept, until the only thing left remaining is the indescribable, unnameable truth.
And the source text actually takes a moment to mock our arrogance regarding language, doesn't it?
Oh, yes, it does.
It sharply critiques the simplistic ways we try to reduce cosmic truths into linguistic theories. Like, it specifically dismisses the onomatopoeia theory, which anthropologists sometimes refer to as the Bow Wow theory of language origin.
Yeah, the Bow Wow theory. It posits that the entirety of complex human language evolved slowly from early hominids, merely imitating the ambient sounds of nature. Grunting at a dog, barking bow wow, or mimicking the crash of thunder.
Right.
The author highlights this theory to expose the absurdity of our hubris. It is profoundly arrogant to believe that a communication system built on primitive, evolutionary grunts designed to warn the tribe about a predator could ever be successfully stretched to encapsulate the absolute, multidimensional truth of an infinite cosmos.
That puts it in perspective.
Our words are simply pragmatic, low-resolution labels we slap onto the surface of reality so we can survive and navigate the cosmic game. The label on the jar is not the contents of the jar.
And this ancient linguistic frustration brings us right back to the cutting edge of modern science. Because the physicists working at the Large Hadron Collider and the theoretical mathematicians writing papers on quantum gravity are slamming into the exact same linguistic nightmare today.
The parallel is undeniable. When a quantum physicist attempts to explain the phenomenon of superposition,
which is the experimentally verified reality that a single subatomic particle can exist in multiple contradictory locations at the exact same time until it is observed.
right, when they try to explain that, They sound like they're speaking gibberish. They struggle intensely because they are forced to use English or German or Mandarin languages built entirely on the foundation of classical Newtonian physics.
Right. A standard human sentence requires a subject, an active verb, and a distinct object.
It demands a clear separation between here and there, before and after, cause and effect. It is an architecture of strict duality.
But quantum mechanics, perfectly mirroring the philosophy of Shuddhadvaita, describes a fundamentally non-dual reality where those separations do not exist.
Exactly.
So when a modern physicist stands at a chalkboard and declares, this electron is simultaneously a wave of infinite probability and a finite point of mass, they sound absolutely identical to an ancient mystic chanting, Brahman is simultaneously everything and nothing.
Yes.
Neither of them is speaking nonsense. They're both just desperately trying to stretch the medieval farming language of classical duality to describe the non-dual internet of the universe.
They are two entirely distinct dialects. One built on advanced mathematics and empirical observation, the other built on intense introspection and philosophical rigor. But both are straining against the limits of human expression to point toward the exact same fundamentally indescribable, unified truth.
Wow. We have journeyed through an immense philosophical and scientific landscape today. Let's try to synthesize this incredible overlap before we wrap up.
Sounds good.
We started at the dawn of existence, looking at how the mind-bending infinite density of a cosmological singularity perfectly mirrors the ancient Vedic concept of Sushupti, the unified, unmanifested deep sleep of Brahman.
And then we examine the physical reality of the cosmos, discovering how the universe is not an illusion, but a genuine, tangible transformation. Much like solid gold being fundamentally unchanged when forged into a new necklace.
Right, and we realized this transformation is driven not by cold thermodynamic necessity, but by Leela, the pure, overflowing joy of a cosmic entity playing a grand game with itself.
We confronted the difficult truth regarding human suffering, learning that true joy, Ananda, is not a fleeting, anxiety-ridden emotion triggered by a promotion or a vacation.
It is the very structural fabric of your existence, intentionally veiled by the cosmic fog of war so you can genuinely engage in the drama and limitations of the game of life.
And finally, we collided with the hard boundaries of our own communication, realizing that whether you are writing an incredibly complex quantum equation on a whiteboard or translating a thousands-year-old Sanskrit text, words and math can only act as signposts pointing toward the truth. They are incapable of containing the truth itself.
So what is the overarching takeaway from diving into all these seemingly disparate sources?
I think it's a message of profound unification. It proves that the cold rigor of empirical science and the deep introspection of ancient philosophy do not have to be framed as bitter enemies in a war for truth. They are not mutually exclusive paradigms.
They're just different tools.
Exactly. They are simply two highly specialized methodologies, two distinct sets of instruments, probing the exact same magnificent, complex reality. The relentless pursuit of knowledge, whether you are gazing outward through the multi-billion-dollar lens of a space telescope or gazing deeply inward through the silent discipline of meditation, ultimately converges on a single, unified, intensely joyous whole.
And that profound convergence leads me to a final, slightly provocative thought I want to leave you with. Something for you to deeply consider long after this deep dive is over.
I'm ready.
We spend an enormous amount of time dissecting how this philosophy frames the universe as Brahman engaged in an elaborate game of Leela. The ultimate consciousness fracturing itself into billions of distinct biological pieces merely to experience the vast multiplicity of its own creation. But take a moment to strip away the abstract philosophy and internalize what that actually means for your daily existence. If the entire cosmos is indeed a playground inhabited by a single ultimate consciousness that has localized itself into various shapes to experience reality, then when you walk outside into the darkness tonight and you look up at the sprawling, infinite canopy of stars, it is not actually you, a small, isolated human looking up at a distant universe.
Oh.
It is the universe looking back at itself. You are the cosmos experiencing its own majesty from one highly specific, beautifully limited, completely irreplaceable point of view. Keep diving deep.